Hello, Renegade marketers. If this is your first time listening, welcome. And if you're a regular listener, welcome back. You're about to hear a bonus huddle, a specially curated huddle that we run once a month with experts sharing their insights into the topics of critical importance to our CMO community. We call them huddlers. This time, we're talking to Asher Matthew, the CEO of Partnership Leaders, who joined us to share how CMOs can use partnerships as a key revenue driver. This is the moment, this is the opportunity, because right now, when budgets are down, this is a way of really stretching your dollars. He dives into how you can be a strategic partner, minimize the fallout of the partnership planning tax, what a modern partnership looks like, and explains their successful partnership journey with HubSpot. If you like what you hear, we'd love it if you could subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us out in our quest to be the #1 B2B marketing podcast. All right, let's dive in. Hello, huddlers. As B2B marketers grapple with ever-shrinking budgets, partnerships stand out as a strategic beacon for not just extending resources, but also driving innovation and growth. Today, we'll uncover how building effective partnerships is becoming more of a science than an art form. I mean, if you think back 10, 15 years ago, yeah, there were people who did partner programs, but we didn't certify them. We didn't have sophisticated tools and processes and metrics that really are part of today's state-of-the-art partnership programs. So with that, let's welcome Asher Matthew, co-founder and CEO of Partnership Leaders. He may be like the most knowledgeable partnership person in the world. We'll find out. Asher helps partnership executives navigate their careers through a private network, education, research, and by speaking with groups like CMO Huddles. So with that, hello, Asher. How are you and where are you this fine day?
Well, thanks so much for having me. I am in San Jose, California, after a busy week of meeting with, I'm going to say, I think I've met with maybe 300 partner professionals this year. It was a very busy week in the land of partnering.
What was the inspiration for founding Partnership Leaders, and what gap did you fill?
Yeah, if you really think about the economics of partnering, right, there is the layer of producing something with partnerships. Then there is the layer of distributing through partnerships, and then there is the consumption layer that can be solved through partnerships, right? If we convert that into how partner programs have worked traditionally, we've spent a lot of time on the distribution layer of partnerships, and the word channels is always used, like channel sales, channel marketing, distributors. Those are the words that have been used historically, right? And then if we look at the consumption layer of partnerships, you can think of it as the services layer, where alliances have been used. The word alliances comes up a lot. The word solutions comes up a lot. The word agency, the word services comes up a lot, right? And so, but if we look at the production side of partnerships, which is really where tech companies get together, the word integrations comes up a lot, right? But it also leads to joint ventures. It leads to creating new products together. And so historically, the market has focused, or at least I would say the community market has focused on building things for the distribution layer of partnerships and the consumption layer of partnerships.
Right.
But the tech partner professionals, the people that are asked to go figure out how to get on other companies' roadmap, they didn't have any place to go to. And it just so happened that I was one of those individuals, and I was looking for a place where I could go connect with other people who were just like me. And we would talk about best practices. We would talk about the lessons learned. We would celebrate each other's successes. None of that existed. And so we started this thing as a hobby. And, just in every startup's journey, there are a few things that the world helps you with, and then you have to hustle, right? So COVID basically provided us this amazing opportunity where the traditional community setup just didn't work. Like, there was no way for you to go meet with people because companies stopped travels, companies stopped a bunch of things, right? So that gave us a chance to actually start this email group that had about 11 people on it. And then that thing became 900 people in 3 months. But all communities flourished, right? Like all digital communities flourished. at that point in time. The thing about ours was you couldn't get in it if you didn't know anybody else because we didn't have any resources because at that point in time, all communities were, for lack of a better term, broke. You know? And so those were our humble beginnings. And since then, we now are the #1 global private network for people who identify as partner, as ecosystem, as channels, as alliances, like in the partnerships world, whichever identity you assume, we are the home for you. We have 1,700 paid members in 54 countries that represents about 1,200 companies today. We have all the way from SMB all the way to large. So like hot startups like Nectar.ai, all the way to AWS, we work with all of them.
And it's amazing. You and I talked when you were still working. Were you at Demandbase?
I was at Demandbase, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you were still there, where you started this thing as, yeah, maybe it'll be something. And next thing you know, it's a business and it sounds like a very successful business. So congrats to you.
It's a really fun one too. And you know, the audience may actually appreciate this, but there was a moment about a year and a half ago where our members actually called us out and said, why aren't you building this thing out? You literally have everything that you need. And so what is it? Is it money? Is it resources? Is it support? Like, what do you need to go build it? We actually you know, normally what founders do is they come up with an idea, then they go raise a bunch of money, then they try to go create a category, then they try to go do all these things to build a company, right? Very rarely do your customers just call you out. And we got called out. And so we said, okay, well, we're going to go do something about this.
Yeah, which is just awesome. I want to go through the producing, distribution, and consumption thing because I think it's so interesting. And a lot of the CMOs and CMO huddles are technology providers, and often they're not the whole thing, right? And the more that they can bring a complete solution to the customer, the easier it is for them. So I'm so glad that you helped isolate that part of it. You're absolutely right. We had a huddle last week, earlier this week, and the person who was responsible for channel showed up with our other person, right? Because that was the way they were looking at partnerships. Talk a little bit about, in your view, and do we need to break each of these down, or is it the same principles of, as you start to think about partnerships and what make them successful? And obviously we're talking all B2B here, but what are some of the core principles that you all preach?
Yeah, totally. My point of view after studying the market, and even though I was a professional and a practitioner myself, when you take on a role like this, you have a much wider point of view because, you know, like we have companies that are in all different phases of their journey. They serve different markets, right? To me, you have to have a very clear corporate reason to go partner, right? And the corporate reason is either I'm going to go build something, I'm either buying something, or I'm partnering. And in a lot of startups, which is where a lot of this confusion happens, right? The partners just walk through your doors, similar to like not all of your customers are like your ideal customers. So they just walk through the door and then they start demanding things and it becomes a shiny object syndrome problem. But to me, like for executives, you have to have a very clear conversation about, are we going to build this thing, right? We're going to support a use case, or are we going to buy it, or we're going to go partner? And then that's when you start to develop the partner hypothesis even further. And then it branches off into two. Is this, can this be solved through a product partnership, or can this be solved through a go-to-market partnership? Then, you know, we can dive into it a little bit more in this convo.
Those are really helpful because the reason we're having this conversation is exactly as I said at the top of the hour, which is budgets are tight. Yes. And you're trying to reach a group of people to get them to sort of put your product on the list, right? You're trying to get on the short list as a marketer. That's your goal, right? And and obviously help in an ideal world close that deal. And partnerships can be, if done right, incredibly efficient because there's a partner out there that probably already has a relationship with all the customers that you want to talk to. So that is the sort of the go-to-market type partner, right?
Totally.
And I want to talk about that, I guess, for a moment because of the economies of scale, the efficiency that is there. Where, you know, as you're laying out your partnership program, I mean, let's again sort of go back to basics. We now understand that you got to have motivation. Why you're doing it? Well, we're doing it because you've got this reach into this community that we don't have. So
Yes.
now what?
Yeah. So I would say for this audience, we can think of using partnerships from the lens of either you were utilizing somebody else's audience or you're going to build the audience with them, right? And the two key words are you're either leveraging channel marketing or you're co-marketing. And in my point of view, they are two separate things, because when you're looking at channel marketing, you're saying, hey, I'm going to go work with a company and they already have a set of partners and I want to use their partners to get to my growth goals. And then there's co-marketing, which is I'm going to go and work with this other company and we are going to market to each other's audience. And that could be prospects or customers. And so those are two separate motions, in my humble opinion. And both of them come with their own, I would say, quote unquote, planning tax. And I just put a document in the chat, and we can share this with the audience too, where one of your community members, John Miller, actually walked us through why it can be so difficult for marketing organizations to overcome this planning tax. One of the things that happens, and I've experienced this myself, and partnership leaders also co-markets with like brands like HubSpot and AWS, right? Marketers have a list of priorities which are set up by the direct team. And then they want to go, like somewhere in there, there is a partner team that wants to go and work with other companies. And because the resourcing is always, in most cases, comes in the form of, I'll give you 10% of a marketer's time, but the resourcing's burden is maybe like 100x what that person has time for, right? And so what happens is there's this triangulation that needs to happen. And so 3 different content calendars have to get together in this co-marketing scenario, right? And the organization isn't ready for that. And then sometimes it takes time. Like if you were to go do a campaign with like McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, you know, like their content calendars are like forever, right? Like they have no sense of urgency because they're going to do something for 100 years, right? So the timeliness of this thing becomes very problematic, even though people have budgets, right? The budget is not the problem. It becomes the, how do I utilize each of the resources in a timely manner? And then one company always has more urgency than the other company. And then this planning tax gets created, right? And then also a lot of times people, before they hire a professional partner marketer who lives and breathes this, they give this to either a content marketer or a digital marketer, and the digital marketer is just waiting for assets, and the content marketer is just waiting for copy. And so if you've asked somebody to do something just very different than what they normally do, even though they may claim that it's a cool idea, this planning tax gets created, and it's so burdensome that in this co-marketing environment, like teams get frustrated and they just don't want to do anything. And then the output, they unwillingly do the work, and then the output is in the form of a webinar, a digital asset, a physical asset, an event, or something like that. And it's just shoddy, right? And then nobody wants to do it again. Right.
So it fails from the beginning because it was under-resourced.
Totally. And compared to like, let's say what Partnership Leaders is doing right now, I'll give you my company's example, and then hopefully that helps, right? We first aligned with HubSpot on their advocacy goal. And HubSpot's major go-to-market motion is community-led growth, right? We all know that they're big on community, right? So for us to work with them makes sense because their company's culture is community-led and we are a community. Then inside of that, we said, hey, what is your goal? And they said advocacy. And we're like, what? You don't even have a partner product. And they said, doesn't matter. We still want to support the community, right? So there was an alignment on this corporate goal. And then PL becomes one of the ways that they can, partnership leaders, I use PL for short, becomes one of the ways that you can accomplish that goal. And now the person that is given this goal and this task is a partner marketer, and then everything gets orchestrated. And so we have done maybe like 6 different reports with them. They were at our conference, we were at their partner day, and now we are helping them define their next generation partner strategy. And they have such a solid brand in this market, and we have such a solid reach because of the credibility that they helped us, very few communities can actually say that they've done multiple successful projects with even a company like HubSpot, and in the grand scheme of things, they're just a $2 billion ARR company, and we are now working with AWS based on the success of that.
So talk about that. They have a lot that you guys wanted, right? They have reach, they have credibility, they have a much bigger brand. So it sounds like what you identified, the key thing there was something they don't have that you do, right? And so you were coming in somewhere, at least in terms of the win-win proposition, good for them, good for you. But
Yes.
they're the giant, you're the minnow. How do you make sure that, one, we know the giants tend to move slowly and can crush things underneath them pretty easily.
Yeah.
How did you sort of navigate this, and let's extrapolate from there to how can, if you are partnering with a much larger company, how do you make sure that it works?
Yeah. So one thing we didn't do is we didn't go in with greedy eyes. We said, why don't we take small bites at this?
Right.
But our end goal is not one campaign or one activity. It's we're going to build a go-to-market with them. And we're going to build a go-to-market with them because their track record is of doing high-quality things. And then they are probably going to test us on a track record of doing high-quality things. So if partnership leaders goes out and like creates a bunch of hype, creates a bunch of like things that doesn't make sense and doesn't actually work on outcomes, they're not going to do anything with us. So there was alignment on everything we're going to do is high quality, but we're going to build momentum. And if we're going to build momentum, if it takes us 3 more months, it's actually okay. Because once we have the momentum, it's going to be hard to stop us. When we had that type of alignment, it was then hard to not just start with the right resource and then build this thing out. And then slowly, we just and I'm saying slowly, and all this stuff really happened in 2 years. So it's in the grand scheme of things, it's not really slow, but it may feel slow if you're in a hyper growth environment.
Right. If you're trying to get something going and you were expecting to go to market in 3 months with a giant partner, it may not happen.
If you're on the T2, D3 plan, this may not work.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. This show is brought to you by CMO Huddles, the only marketing community dedicated to B2B greatness and that donates 1% of revenue to the Global Penguin Society. Why? Well, it turns out that B2B CMOs and penguins have a lot in common. Both are highly curious and remarkable problem solvers. Both prevail in harsh environments by working together with peers, and both are remarkably mediagenic. And just as a group of penguins is called a huddle, our community of over 300 B2B marketing leaders huddle together to gain confidence, colleagues, and coverage. If you're a B2B CMO, why not dive into CMO Huddles by registering for our free starter program on cmohuddles.com. Hope to see you in a huddle soon. Going back to the sort of the personnel focus, obviously for you, this was a cornerstone marketing program. For them, this was just a thing of many things they were doing. How did you make sure that there was actually someone there at HubSpot who was paying attention, or at least would give enough time to make sure that whatever small thing you were doing would work?
Yeah, well, it's easy for us because one of our members took a job there. It becomes a little bit of a slight advantage, but also we waited. We didn't just say, hey, we really want this. Can you go do this? Things somewhat started to happen naturally. One of the quickest ways to figure out who you should co-market with is just ask your customers. Run a survey, ask them, hey, what are all the things that you read? And in those things that that you read or that you see, if there was a brand that you think we could have brought this message better together with them to you, who would that be? And the customers will just tell you.
Interesting. I wonder if they'd always know who that is, but they certainly have. Every one of your customers is buying stuff from other people, is what you're saying. And there are within that ecosystem, whether you're, a tech company or a service company or whatever, there are others that they working with that probably have a bigger share of wallet, right? And that's part of it.
Yeah, I would say in the channel marketing world, you're a little bit, I would say, limited because you have a set of partners that you just have to drive a message through, and they have a set of tactics. But in the co-marketing world, where you're not reduced to an integration or a product or something being created, you can just say, we care about this message in the world, and this company is a proponent of that, and we are too. We'll just align on everything that they do, or some of the things, right? So you could co-market on a social cause. You could co-market on a environmental cause. You could co-market on an economic cause. Like, as I became a better student of marketing at my time at Demandbase, and also learning from Karen Steele, who was the CMO at Lean Data, if you just think of marketing and co-marketing together, you can do lots without staying in the confines of just the product world.
Right, because there's so many different things. Now, the challenge, you've already identified that a lot of partnerships fail because initially the individuals assigned to it are not partnership professionals. They simply don't have the time to do it well, and then it doesn't do well, and therefore it doesn't work, and everybody goes, oh, this partnership thing stinks.
Yeah.
But there's this chicken and the egg, because how do I assign resources when it's not delivering, anything today? Help us. It sounds like you start small, but the key thing in the story that you shared was HubSpot represented a huge opportunity for your brand.
Totally. Yes.
Right. And so I think part of this thinking, just, if you want to fight above your weight class, if you will, pick a partner who already is there. Figure out what the value is that you can bring to that partner, and then make sure that you have resources that are assigned to it. And this is where it gets into your world, which is people who actually know how to do this. And so let's just talk about what is a partnership professional today. I mean, you guys do certification, right?
We do. We
What
We
does
do.
that mean? What do you get certified on? What are you learning? What are these skills?
Yeah. Just to answer your question, if you're going from 0 to 1 in partnerships, right? The partner manager role is a very disciplinary role, right? And every good partner manager should understand basic marketing. And we are recommending that, like, if you've never had success with any partners, that you start with co-marketing, because you will refine your message. It's the same thing as a startup going to market, and right after product market fit, they go to market fit, but then somewhere in the middle, they get their message market fit, right? If your messaging is working and you have a value prop that the customers really like and would want to discuss with you, then you can build the rest of your go-to-market out on the backside of that, right? So just the 0 to 1 problem is solved through co-marketing. It's in some cases, people try to push this through co-selling, but the co-marketing angle is, I believe, a better exploratory angle, in my humble opinion. Let's talk a little bit about the modern partner professional, right? Traditionally, I guess as we talk about the modern partner professional, let me give you a little bit of a history of like what has been happening and what is now happening, right? What's been happening is that people that didn't, traditionally people that didn't cut in sales were pushed to partnerships because they were the relationship people. What the market also knows these people as is people like to wine and dine, and like all the stigma that we like have in partnerships. The modern partner professional is actually not that at all. The modern partner professional is actually a business person. We will do 300 events this year, and I will tell you that like every event that I go to, I'm surprised at how much alcohol is just left over. It just to the point where we're thinking about just like converting to like organic juices and stuff like that, and just like not even serving, because like nobody's drinking, because people are in conversation. We just had an event last night. We had about 90 some people, and the conversations that they were happening were business conversations. And so the primarily one for us, with us being around, and there's a number of other organizations that are working with the modern partner professional to really help them understand how rigor is established in their sales process, how rigor is established in their marketing process. And so if I give you a quick framework, right, to what I share with people is they first need to figure out how to research and develop their partners, similar to how you would start a company, right? Then I recommend that people need to figure out how to get a straight line to revenue. And then once they've figured that out, they need to figure out how they get a straight line to repeatability. The minute they figure that out, they need to figure out how they drive rigor through their organizations. And after that, they need to figure out how they build resilience in their plans, because they are going to miss at some point in time. And when they miss, it's either going to be the partner's problem, our problem, both the customer's never going to say it was their problem, right? So pointy finger is going to start. So there's got to be this R&D, revenue, repeatability, rigor, and resilience plan in place so that people can present themselves as leaders, like as executives, not functional people. That is a lot of the work that we are doing. And obviously, a lot of this stuff starts at the very beginning, where when a partner manager becomes certified through our ecosystem university program, they go through, what does it mean to understand your partner strategy? How does execution look like? How do I report back? How do I become data driven? All of these things that sales people and I would say marketing professionals go through early in their career, now partner people are going through it. The concept of like understanding your ideal partner profile, figuring out your target account list, again, all these things exist in sales and marketing, but the partner version of that didn't exist this rigorously. And we have introduced a lot of that by building it with our community.
Well, and interesting, so many different thoughts in mind on all of this that we could break down, but is the person that is sort of partner development, right? Is that the same person as partner manager? I mean, or are we getting to the point where if these programs are big enough, you have people who can sort of conceive them, do the research and really sort of set it up for a win-win. But then there are other people who are all about the execution and the rigor and so forth. Because it feels like research and revenue are kind of, a front early stage. And then we've got this the executional part.
Yeah. So because the pillars are, you either are in the product partnership land or you're in the go-to-market partnership land, both of those have these pillars in them, right? Because if you're in the product partnership land, you have to figure out which use cases am I going to go solve for. When I figure those use cases out, how do I align our roadmaps together? Once I figure that out, what's the commercial model for that? It's literally the same thing as building a startup, right? And on the go-to-market side, you're going to go figure out who are the right channel partners and how do I get these referrals and this reselling activity going. There's a third component to it these days, which is becoming very popular, called marketplaces. And it's no different. You have to figure out which marketplace am I going to go list on and how many resources I'm going to put behind that. And that primarily depends on which cloud provider your customers prefer.
Interesting. As I'm thinking about this, as you're elevating this level, and I'm imagining at some organizations, this notion of a chief partnership officer is emerging.
That would be the third gift of the world to us, as I was talking about the other gifts of the world, because every startup has, I would say, some macro help that allows it to take off. We were actually thinking about this because historically there is a role called the channel chief that exists. And at least from my research, the channel chief is a very celebratory role. It's not like an org chart role. And then what happened is about 18 months or so ago, SAP and Microsoft introduced the chief partner officer. It's interesting. I'm actually talking to the chief partner officer of Microsoft right after this call. I'll make that podcast available for everybody to listen to too. And what's happened is, just like companies manage their SMB, mid-market, enterprise customers, they also need to manage their product partners and their go-to-market partners, right? I say go-to-market because today go-to-market serves sales, marketing, customer success, all three pillars, right? So they're all bucketed in there, right? But in that, you could have like 4, 5, 6 different types of partners. And so if there's no enterprise leader who is responsible for prioritizing and optimizing partner relationships, then it makes it very difficult for the CRO, whose job is to prioritize and optimize revenue, or in my humble opinion, the CMO, whose job is to prioritize and optimize markets. When that doesn't happen, then there's this void and the partner team just is being volleyed around in the org. But if you have this enterprise leader that goes in and says, I will actually manage and contribute, and maybe in some cases drive the buy build partner conversation, and the partner piece I'll actually elaborate on. Then you create this organization that looks very similar to some of the other go-to-market organizations, except in this organization, you have the product resources to build the partner product, and then you have the go-to-market resources to sell or market with partners.
So I'm thinking about the CMO audience and where this fits in. And it feels like if you don't have a formal partnership process and you're a CMO and you want to stretch every single dollar you have, this initiative might not start in sales. This initiative will start in marketing. And at some point in time, it gets so mature that it rolls out of marketing, I guess, is the way you're describing it. So as CMOs look at their team, I mean, I could imagine that they have a person on their team, if they see partnerships as a way of growing markets, then they're going to want to have that expertise in their group, right?
And to me, I'm actually okay with that too, because like the CPO role is not a territorial role, right? It is a cross-functional role, just like the CEO role, or like I would say, like when you're an enterprise leader, you're not a territorial leader, right? You're there to grow the business. It doesn't actually matter like whether you have direct ownership of those resources or not. I mean, case in point, the SDR role, where depending on the season, the SDR team is like in sales or it's in marketing and just keeps evolving around. And to me, it's like whoever is going to care the most about these partner marketers and make them wildly successful should own them or own that team, and then produce and make sure that they have the resources, the rigor, and provide them coaching. And some CMOs love that. Some CMOs would prefer that they actually sit closer to the other partner colleagues so they're in sync with that group. And it's just a matter of preference, right?
Right.
Like, and company. There is no, I don't believe, I don't have religion on it, and I don't recommend companies should have religion on this thing.
Right. It's got to be what works for your organization. Some of it can be organic, but it is really about the recognition there needs, as you develop these programs, it's an expertise. You need to have experts assigned to it. And, you know, it's funny because in any organization, if something is important, it really isn't important until there's somebody senior with that title owning it, right?
Totally. Totally. And we were using the word experts, but I would even go as far as specialists.
Right.
Because like today, the current state is generalists. And if we could just move this to specialists, the yield from these activities will turn positive much faster than in the past. And then if you can afford experts and you got this to a point where you're running multiple co-marketing programs,
right?
How cool would that be? Because on one side, you're co-marketing with B2C companies, and on the other side, you're marketing with B2B, co-marketing with B2B companies. Now your brand, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is like why I came out of this show, but one of the bigger challenges for CMOs is going to be, how do I keep my company relevant? And co-marketing is like an amazing way to do that.
Right. Because I mean, it can immediately give you credibility in a market you had no credibility in because your partner already does.
Totally.
Part of the thing that the specialisting really reminds me of is that you have a process. You know where the bodies are, you know where things can go wrong.
Yes.
You know what success looks like, so you can feel it. If it is going off the rails, you can sort of bring it back, which kind of gets to this issue of how do we measure partnerships effectively? I mean, what is the state of measurement for that?
Yeah. If the funding is coming from the demand generation bucket, you have to measure it with the same demand gen metrics. If it's coming from the brand bucket, at least for this audience, you have to measure it that way. And it just goes back to the same goal, right? Like if you're saying, hey, I will spend, let's say, $2 million on this campaign, and it's a Super Bowl ad, right? Then maybe you co-market with a couple of other companies together and split the money up. And again, I have not done a Super Bowl ad, so I don't know if they will allow
6 million.
Yeah. Was it 6 million? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know if the folks that like put these ads on would actually allow 5 different logos on the same ad, but it could be worth putting something like that together at a grand scale. And then whichever way you want to measure that, it's fine. But I always go back to the whichever budget it's coming from, just measure it the same way. Don't create new metrics. And if somebody's trying to create new metrics, it's just a waste of time.
the head of marketing practice at Forrester, talked to us at the end of February, and they see partnerships as another thing that needs to be on the dashboard. In other words, along with, employee SAT and customer SAT and prospect, obviously the normal, however you measure pipeline, but partnership being such a critical way of growth right now.
Yeah.
And then this is a conversation came up a lot in huddles in the last week, which was that you need to understand sort of the health of the relationship. And a good relationship because you're meeting every quarter and they are excited about it, happy about it. And a bad one because they're not returning your phone calls and they're ignoring things and they're pushing everything off. If you have enough of these, it makes sense to have some kind of, the equivalent of a net promoter score for partners.
Totally. So we go back to if we're looking at this as business owners, we have stakeholders in the market called prospects, customers, investors, let's say analysts, but the stakeholder called partners doesn't have the same rigor on them, just like everybody else has, right? But that's changing now because of what you just said and the senior analysts pushing this through the market. And the creating a partner dashboard shouldn't take that long of a time because you probably already have some way to measure customer satisfaction in your company.
Right.
And all you have to do is just move that to your partner audience.
Right.
You can fine tune. 80% of the things are going to be the same. If the partners aren't picking your phone calls up, which is the same thing if your customers aren't picking your phone calls up, right? If the emails aren't coming back, if the conversations are materializing into pipeline and deals or retention, like but they're not different. Like it's not a world to be scared of, I guess is what I'm pointing to.
That's so helpful as we can use metrics we already have. In terms of budgeting for partnerships, I mean, again, I think this goes back to the beginning of the conversation where it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. It depends on the partner. It depends on a lot of things. There are a lot of variables when it comes to budgeting. The ultimate goal, though, I'm imagining is you're going to spend X and you're going to get a 10X return.
Yeah.
Because you're suddenly being able to say, engage a group of people that you couldn't reach before, right? You went from 0 to 100.
Yeah. And this is kind of the tough part in working with partnerships is when you go and ask for like benchmark data, you're going to get very, very vague answers, right? Not every partner is created equal. So even if you took a study, then the data's like false for your situation, right? What I've recommended is whatever your direct go-to-market is, this way should be more efficient than that. And even direct teams today, at least this is when I ran direct teams, when you hit the benchmark, you're trying to figure out how to get that more efficient. And so you have to apply the same rigor on your partner go-to-market too, and push it to see how far it'll go. You'll start to hit cost per lead metrics and cost per opportunity metrics. They're all the same metrics, right? And so all you're doing is adding another line that says partner and start measuring that and seeing if we can improve that quarter over quarter.
So I'm imagining a scenario that's easy to sort of think about. So you're in 3 vertical markets now. You want to get into a 4th vertical market and you say, we know what our costs are for these 3 vertical markets because we're going and we're doing it on our own. And you kind of know what your cost per opportunity is, or you should. So now we say we're going to pick a new vertical, but instead of doing it direct, we're going to partner. So whatever our cost per opportunity is, if you will, we want to make it half, right?
Yeah, half may be aggressive going out the door, but start with like, let's say 10% or 15% or 25%, right? Half, I feel like is a little extreme, but you could try it. You could say a quarter of our budget, we're going for half.
Right.
And the rest, we're just going to go for 25% and just see where you land.
But even 25% improvement in efficiency and opening up a new market is huge.
Totally.
Huge.
Yes.
I mean, at this point in time, I imagine that most of the CMOs with a mature go-to-market motion would be thrilled with a 10% efficiency from a partnership.
And that's just program dollars, right? You're not equating the resourcing dollars. If you look at it from a company level, the company did not have to register in that market. I'm assuming like there's other compliancy things that you have to go do. None of that had to happen. I don't know if all of those costs actually factor into your cost per opportunity, but maybe they do in sophisticated organizations.
Right. One of the things that obviously comes out is defining these win-wins, right? Being able to envision that when partnerships fail, it's typically because one side's getting greedy, that they want more, or they were expecting more, or they expecting it to be easier or whatever, and they don't see the value equation. So this feels like a very fundamental part of the partnership ecosystem, is just being able to create and envision equitable arrangements from the start.
Yeah. And by the way, it's not rocket science, right? Like some of the chatter on LinkedIn makes this feel like it's rocket science. It's literally like getting on a call, spending 20 minutes, and for seasoned operators, which most of, like obviously all of your members are, this is a very straightforward thing. You know whether this is going to work out or not, based on the conversation.
Right. And because of all these other things that we've already talked about, that they have the interest in it, they have the same goals in terms of, oh, we want to do this efficiently too. And you bring this to the table. And again, even a small brand has something to bring to the table. Usually it's something innovative that the big companies simply can't do. Are there any trends that you're seeing that will be shaping future partnerships other than we're all going to do more of them?
I would say we're all going to do more high quality partnerships, because right now, and this is a slight like concern of mine too, is like we're all very high on partnerships, right? Which is great. Like it's awesome. I love it. But we need to be very high on very high quality partnerships.
Yep.
Right. And so that's what I think is actually going to happen, is the world's going to wake up and find out like, hey, you can't actually partner with everybody. You have to establish rigor. And if it's not repeatable, you're not going to do it. And some people will follow this repeatability and rigor thing to the dot. And all the really good operators will like look at it like, we have to make this thing work this way. And that's where the seasoned folks come in, right? Like they know that if it's not repeatable, we're just not going to do it. And then they cut bait. And then what you're left with is amazing, solid partnerships that both companies are very proud to be a part of. And they feel like they can go to the customers, and the customers are singing their praises. And you'll know, like within a quarter or 2 quarters that of launching, that it's actually working.
Yeah, it feels like, again, this is the focus is your friend. You don't need 100, you need 2 good ones in a lot of times. Okay, well, we're running out of time, so let's just wrap up for B2B CMOs when thinking about partnerships and approaching them. Let's wrap up with 2 do's and 1 don't when it comes to building effective partnerships.
Yeah, so my 2 do's are going to be, please look for repeatability and drive rigor from the start. Don't tolerate vagueness. If it's vague, don't tolerate it, because it doesn't exist. Like the world has been doing partnerships forever. There's enough seasoned partner professionals out there. If you're tolerating vagueness, you're allowing like unpredictability to jump in from the beginning, and it's going to cause problems down the road for you.
Got it. All right. This is why people have scopes of work and partnership agreements.
People write 2-pagers if they have to, and review that until it's very clear what both parties are going to get out of it.
If people want to find you, Asher, where they look? LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is great. This is the best. I always say this is the best job I have, because it's something that I love to do. And so I'm around to help any discipline learn more about better partnering.
I love it. All right. Well, Asher Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. If you're a B2B CMO and you want to hear more conversations like this one, find out if you qualify to join our community of sharing, caring, and daring CMOs at cmohuddles.com. Renegade Marketers Unite is written and directed by Drew Neisser. Hey, that's me. This show is produced by Melissa Caffrey, Laura Parkin, and Ishar Cuevas. The music is by the amazing Burns Twins, and the intro voiceover is Linda Cornelius. To find the transcripts of all episodes, suggest future guests, and learn more about CMO Huddles or my CMO coaching service, please visit renegademarketing.com. I'm your host, Drew Neisser. Until next time, keep those Renegade marketing caps on and strong.